Okay, here goes. You know the place you took me to last night? Place you work?
Heroes for sale?
You got a boss, right?
Yeah.
Hey, what's his name?
Lance.
That's him. He called the place where I work. He ordered a girl for you. He said he wanted you to get laid. See, you didn't get out much, and it was your birthday and all. He wanted me to act like I just showed up. Now, how did he know you were going to be at that theater?
Well, I go to the movies every year on my birthday. In fact, he called me up this week to find out what my birthday movie was going to be.
You're not mad?
Oh, man. Can't tell you, that was one of the best times I ever had. It was. You know, I knew something must be rotten in Denmark. There was no way you could like me that much. I mean, I can't tell you how relieved I was when you took off your dress. You didn't have a dick.
Stop being so fucking calm about all this. Go look in your house. There's a note on your TV, and all it says is Dear Clarence, because I couldn't write anymore. So I just said, Alabama, come clean. And just tell him what's what. And if he tells you to go back to Drexel and fuck yourself, then go back to Drexel and fuck yourself.
Drexel? What's a Drexel?
Please shut up. I'm trying to come clean, okay? I've been a call girl for exactly 4 days, and you're my third customer. I want you to know that I'm not damaged goods. I'm not what they call in Florida white trash. I'm a really good person. And when it comes to relationships, I'm 100% monogamous.
You stay with one guy?
Exactly. If I'm with you, then I'm with you, and I don't want anybody else. Now, I gotta tell you something else. When you said last night was one of the best times you ever had, did you mean physically?
Oh, yeah, but I'm talking about the whole night. I mean, I never had as much fun with the girl as I had with you my whole life. It's true. You like Elvis, you like Janice, you like kung fu movies, you like the Partridge Family.
Actually, I don't like the Partridge Family. That was part of the act. And I feel really goofy saying this after only knowing you one night. And me being a call girl and all. But I think I love you.
Welcome to the Perfect Movie Podcast, the podcast that asks the question, hey, want to come see my comic book store? I'm Michael.
I'm Kalen, and I really want to see that comic book store.
Wow, you're so cultured.
So cultured.
That's really interesting.
You're just a different guy, and I appreciate that.
You're a nice guy, and I like that.
You like John Woo movies?
Today, we're covering the film True Romance as part of our Toxic Love Movie February, where we, explore the crossroads of crime and romance, and apparently have a backdoor Tarantino month as well. True Romance is a movie written by Quentin Tarantino and directed by Tony Scott. I think we might do a lot of compare and contrast with last week's episode, which was Natural Born Killers, which is a movie written by Tarantino and directed by Oliver Stone, which he hated.
As you all know, that movie made me want to...
And Kalen hated.
Want to get on a stage in front of thousands of people and swing around a chainsaw.
Yeah.
And do the My Heart Goes Out to You Roman salute. That's how it made me feel.
He didn't like it. Or he did like it. Okay. But now we're doing True Romance, which is a big movie for Detroit.
Yes. Shout out Detroit.
It's a big movie for Tony Scott. Tony Scott, you might know as Ridley Scott's brother, R.I.P. Not to Ridley, but to Tony. To be clear. He's also the director of Top Gun, Days of Thunder, Beverly Hills Cop 2. He was just a real 90s hitmaker, late 80s, early 90s hitmaker, and later in life he gets more into working with Denzel, and I think he directs Man on Fire and a couple other movies.
Which is a great film.
The movie with Denzel and Chris Pine where a train's running away from things, that's a Tony Scott movie. Unstoppable.
Yeah.
I believe. But anyways, Tarantino script, and you can tell. It's about a couple that meets each other. There's a meet cute, kind of. And they are star-crossed right away, and they run away, and the girl's a prostitute, so...
She was, trying to make him a trick or something, but then she fell in love.
The real story is the the man, he works at played by Christian Slater, Clarence. He works at a comic book store, and Alabama is a prostitute who is, works for Gary Oldman, who we meet later on. And Christian Slater's boss hired her to show him a good time. And then she actually falls in love because Christian Slater's just such a swell guy. And he knows so many things about like movies, and he just never stops talking. And it's just really charming the way that he acts. This self-insert Quentin Tarantino character is what it is. This is Quentin Tarantino making a power fantasy about himself.
Yes, much like most of his films.
It's a different read than Natural Born Killers, which I think Natural Born Killers in Tarantino's eyes was going to be a movie more like this, which is a little more earnest and sweet, and also violent, and it doesn't think too hard about the things it's throwing up on the screen. It just is like, is this cool?
Yeah.
Are we having fun?
Formula-wise, pretty much the same thing. Same type of like feel to the movie as Natural Born Killers, but it's just a lot more coherent. It's an actual film, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. And while I was watching this movie, I was just going on a Tarantino trope watch, and these are some Tarantino tropes that we get along the way. White people saying the N-word.
Yes. There's a big scene for that.
There's a big scene for that. Maybe the most racist scene I've ever seen.
It made me feel very uncomfortable watching that.
And in that scene, we're supposed to be rooting for the guy that's saying the most racist shit.
Yeah.
We're rooting for Dennis Hopper, Christian Slater's dad.
Not only is he like super racist to black people, but he's super racist to Italians as well.
The Sicilians.
Sicilians, excuse me. Yeah.
Talking about movies a lot. This movie opens with Christian Slater. Actually, he's talking about Elvis. Maybe just talking about pop culture a lot.
Yeah.
That's kind of all he does. I imagine Christian Slater's character is that guy in the corner of the room of the meme that's saying, like, they don't even know that Elvis was the king of rock and that he's the most legendary man of all kind. He, in our very first scene, is just striking out at a bar while kind of talking to no one about Elvis, while a very disinterested blonde sits kind of nearby. And then they talk for a little bit, and he's like, hey, want to come see 3 kung fu movies with me?
What was it, Street Fighter and...
Well, enough about the king. How about you?
How about me what?
How about you go to the movies with me tonight?
What are we gonna see?
A Sonny Chiba triple feature. The Street Fighter, Return of the Street Fighter, and Sister Street Fighter.
Who's Sonny Chiba?
Who is Sonny Chiba? Well, he's bar none the finest actor working in martial arts movies today.
You want to take me to a kung fu movie?
3 kung fu movies.
I don't think so. Not really my cup of tea.
And that's when he meets the prostitute Alabama, and they go on their loving adventure that turns into murder. Thoroughly enjoying burgers in the morning. That is a Tarantino thing.
Yes.
That's Samuel L. Jackson coming in and saying, where'd you get that burger?
Is that just like a California thing?
It's definitely a Tarantino thing because, man, does fast food huts, are they prominent in this movie?
Yeah.
And right after he murders Gary Oldman, he comes home and he eats a burger, and he just takes a second to mention that this is the best fucking burger I've ever fucking had.
While Alabama is getting brutalized by Tony Soprano.
Yeah. That's later in the movie.
He's ordering
an extra sloppy chili burger.
Chili burger. I didn't even know that existed, but I was
chili fries.
I'm intrigued.
Guys telling long stories under duress. That's the racist scene.
Yes.
Christian Slater also does that when he meets with Gary Oldman. Bloody over-the-top shootouts.
Yes.
Check. Briefcases full of valuables. Check. Prolonged physical beating of the main female lead at the hands of a man.
But then the subverting of the expectation that she's going to die, and she gains the upper hand. That's kind of like a trope or
for sure.
Something along the lines of that.
That's really the end of my Tarantino trope track list. But it checks them all.
It checks out.
So shall we move along? I don't know, Kaylin, how did you feel about this movie?
I thought this movie was fine.
Yeah.
I obviously after watching like Natural Born Killers, I don't know. Nothing is like shocking to me anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That movie changed me forever.
Yeah.
And I don't think in a good way, but I liked it. And going into the performance test, this movie is star-studded. Holy shit. There's a huge lineup of people in this film. Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, Dennis Hopper, Val Kilmer, Gary Oldman, Brad Pitt. It's just... Bronson Pinchot, Samuel L. Jackson. We talked about before we recorded that he was in the movie for like 5 minutes and then he gets murdered by
5 minutes is high. He has 3 lines.
Yeah, by Gary Oldman. I remember like hearing his voice because I was like looking at my phone for a second and I was like, oh, Sam is in this movie? Oh, he's not anymore.
No longer.
James Gandolfini. I love James Gandolfini. I'm a big fan of The Sopranos. And to see him in this, and he's very young in this movie, but you still see like he, I don't know, it just seems like his Tony Soprano comes out every once in a while.
This is Tony Soprano before he becomes like the Don.
Yeah,
He's like the henchman.
Yeah,
it's very just cuts to him. We see Christopher Walken, and the scene's all about Christopher Walken. Then we find out James Gandolfini sitting in the chair behind there, just doing this weird half smile, and you're like, things are not going to go well for Dennis Hopper.
But when he's beating up on Alabama, you get like the Tony Soprano where he's like in her face and like he's very intimidating as a person, and it's kind of like a behind the scenes thing. Like in The Sopranos, when he is in people's faces, like you see a physical reaction from the actors that's like very real because he's just a massive guy and he's kind of scary. But I just love him. I was so happy to see him in this, and there's tons of other people I'm not going to name off. But
another Natural Born Killers connection. There's Tom Sizemore as another one of the worst cops you know.
Yeah, Detective Cody Nicholson. Yeah.
So there's a lot of people. Oh, Michael Rappaport is in this. Michael Rappaport is just a gem of a funny guy to like when you see any of his like Snapchat videos or whatever. But yes, him as the Christian Slater's best friend, the actor.
Did you see the interview with him and Bill Burr and they were talking about this movie?
I don't know, but I bet that was unbelievable.
Bill Burr was like, "You're in one of the greatest movies of all time, True Romance. How was it like being in True Romance?" or whatever. It was just a fun kind of interview. But
those are two guys you can just sit there, talk with their accents. And
right out of the gate, dude, you were in one of the greatest movies of my life, True Romance. My God, the guy from True Romance. Yeah. I'm actually interacting with him. I would never do that.
True Romance.
I mean, Gary Oldman. We talk about Gary Oldman a lot. He's just like, what a guy.
We're introduced with him with a very Tarantino scene of men debating on whether or not they eat pussy, featuring Samuel L. Jackson and Gary Oldman in his dreadlocks, and which ends in gunfire. Like I can't. That's like a summary of Tarantino's career. Is like 3 guys talk about eating pussy for 2 minutes, and then one of them pulls out a shotgun and murders the other one. That's every Tarantino movie ever.
What you motherfuckers talking about?
Boys say you don't be pussy.
Drexel. Shit. Any nigga say he don't eat pussy, lying his ass off.
I heard that. Well, hold on a second. Big D, you saying you eat pussy?
Yeah, motherfucker, I eat everything. I eat the pussy, I eat the butt, I eat every motherfucking thing.
Yeah, if I ever did eat some pussy, I would never eat any pussy, right? But if I did eat some pussy, I sure as hell wouldn't tell no goddamn buddy about it. I'd be ashamed as a motherfucker, man.
Nigga, you smoke enough sherm, your dumb ass will do a lot of motherfucking things. You be up in there sucking niggas' dicks.
But you mentioned also Val Kilmer, which you don't even know it's Val Kilmer until you look at the credits. Val Kilmer is in like 2 scenes of this movie where Christian Slater looks in the mirror and he just has his like Donnie Darko moment where he's talking to his like alter ego in the form of Elvis, who's just always kind of hovering back there in his gold jacket out of focus. And it's just a little, once again, just a little drop in. There's a lot of guys in this film, a lot of like great character actors that drop in and they do 5 minutes of great work and then they go home.
It's just funny because Val Kilmer is like, he's in the main cast list.
Yeah.
Which is funny. But
I mean, he's he worked with Tony Scott before on Top Gun. Like, he is, at this time, he's an it
He was a
guy.
massive actor at this time. I mean, it was like, Tombstone, not too long after or before this? Yeah. He was in everything.
Years is going to be Batman.
Oh, yeah, I forgot he was a Batman once. Yeah.
So lonely, so lonely, so lonely, I could die. Well, can you live with it?
What?
I said, can you live with it?
Live with what?
That son of a bitch walking around breathing the same air as you. Getting away with it every day. Are you haunted?
Yeah.
You want to get unhaunted?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'd kill him. Shoot him in the face. Put him down like a dog.
I can't believe what you're telling me.
See, nothing I just saying about to.
You do that?
Fuck don't deserve to live.
Look, he is haunting me, I mean, I do want to kill him, but I don't want to spend the rest of my life in jail.
Hey, man, I don't blame you.
Thought I'd get away with it.
Get away with it? Killing's the hard part. Getting away with it, that's easy. You think a cop gives a fuck about a pimp?
I think maybe an underplayed performance that I think is one of my favorites is Dennis Hopper as Clarence's father.
Yeah.
Because Clarence, it's so interesting to me the way this movie is written, because I think with a different lens, especially Clarence, Christian Slater's character, would be such a psychopath if we really just kind of tilted the lens a little bit and reflected on all his actions. Yeah. Now the movie whisks you away and it has this wonderful soundtrack, and him and Patricia Arquette have enough chemistry. We were like, they're a fun couple. I guess I want them to survive.
Yeah, and the soundtrack is whimsical at times. Yeah. And it's kind of bizarre.
And it seems really magical. And then there's one moment that deflates it all is when he shows up at his dad's house and he's acting all suave and trying to play it off like this isn't strange that he's doing this.
Yeah.
And he sends off his girlfriend to get beer. And then his dad's like, cut the shit. I haven't seen you in 3 years.
Yeah.
And you show up like a tornado. What are you doing here?
Right.
What is happening? And that's Christian Slater's character's whole thing. He's always got this chattery, yada, yada, yada
He's
thing.
He's one of those guys who's always got something going on, and that thing going on is never good, kind of thing.
Or they're always just trying to have one of those people that's always trying to keep the party up, or always trying to make it seem like they're more interesting or having a more fun time than they are.
Yes. Yes.
He's one of those guys.
Which is massively irritating.
Yeah. I could not stand being around him. The scene where Christian Slater is getting a burger and then there's a guy just reading the magazine, and then he takes the magazine out of his hands to show him which part he thinks is the most interesting, and is just mansplaining to this other man how interesting this Elvis article is in this issue of Time.
Just invasion of privacy. And the guy has to make it seem like he's interested as well.
Does Christian Slater have a touch of the tism? I think that's what we're getting at. It seems like in a modern context, you're this guy, he's not reading social cues at all.
Well, I think you could say that about most Tarantino characters.
You could say that about Tarantino.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Christopher Walken is great.
He's at maximum walking. Every line reading has that biting Walken accent,
Yeah.
And it is one of the best scenes of the movie, and it's such a pity the way it goes down. The Dennis Hopper when he turns the tables and tells his whole story about how Sicilians are a corrupted bloodline. I'm just going to put it that way. Maybe I'll splice in some of the actual movie here.
Yeah.
But I'm and mind you, in this part, Dennis Hopper, we're supposed to be rooting for him.
Right.
We're supposed to be thinking, wow, you showed him, I guess?
Yeah.
And you can maybe read it as he doesn't believe these things, but he knows this will trigger Christopher Walken.
Sure.
In a major way, but just the path we've chosen to go down. There's many ways to trigger a mafia guy, I'm sure, that doesn't involve... you saying the N-word 18 times and explaining how, black people corrupted the Sicilian bloodline.
And offending a group, groups of people that you don't need to do that.
Total strays to the black community.
We're like, what the fuck? Sam Jackson was in this movie.
I'm Sicilian. My father was the world heavyweight champion of Sicilian liars. From growing up with him, I learned the pantomime. There are 17 different things a guy can do when he lies. to give himself away. Guy's got 17 pantomimes. Woman's got 20. Guy's got 17. But if you know them, like you know your own face, they'd be lie detectors all to hell. Now, what we got here is a little game of show and tell. You don't want to show me nothing, but you tell me everything.
I read a lot, especially about things, about history. I find that shit fascinating. Here's a fact. I don't know whether you know or not. Sicilians were spawned by niggers.
Come again?
No, it's a fact. Yeah. You see, Sicilians have black blood pumping through their hearts. And no, if you don't believe me, you can look it up. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, you see, the Moors conquered Sicily. And the Moors are niggers.
Quentin Tarantino is now Steven Spielberg.
No, he's not.
Steven Spielberg doesn't want to be black.
Going back to the James Gandolfini scene where he's beating up Alabama, he has probably the most ridiculous death in this movie, where he's just taking so long to kill this chick, number one. I guess because, well, he's looking for the coke, and then he finds the coke under the bed, and I like that line where he's like, it's under the bed. I should have looked under the bed this whole time, whatever. And then afterwards, he's like, you know, trying to bait her into stabbing him with whatever that pick was or whatever.
It's a wine opener.
Wine opener. And so he's just beating her ass, like brutally beating her ass. I was like, there's no coming back from this.
Yeah, she's getting tossed around this hotel room.
And then she's like thrown into the bathroom, thrown through the shower shield, and then she ends up like lighting his face on fire. Mm-hmm. And beating him over the head with like the back of a toilet.
Yeah.
Like seat or something. And it was so ridiculous. But that was a fun scene though. And that scene to me, that was like Tarantino. That reminded me of like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, ending with Brad Pitt. And there's just fire and blood and dogs and crazy shit everywhere. That's just another Tarantino trope where it's just like shock value action out of nowhere kind of thing. Yeah. And
she has this beat up face that when we get to the actual finale is only used for a joke where a guy's like, what have you been beating her? And Michael Rappaport goes, no, she got it playing basketball. Basketball. We'll get into some more stuff and let the hate flow through you. I have some issues with our romance, and particularly Patricia Arquette's character of Alabama. Yeah. I think she does a really good job in this movie. I think if she doesn't come across as, I don't know, as likable as she is, or like she's so bubbly that you almost excuse the fact that she's not really a person. Yeah. You know?
When she busts in the hot, like in Michael Rappaport's house or whatever, she's like, hey, I'm Alabama. hey, taking pictures of Brad Pitt and stuff. And Brad Pitt is like, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah. And Brad Pitt's here just as a stoner that will not leave his couch.
No, he's just on his couch the whole time.
He's got a bong made out of one of those honey dispensers that's shaped like a bear.
Yeah. But he looked comfortable as shit, and he had the fan blowing on him and stuff. I was like, this guy's is living.
Brad Pitt's best mode is side character in movie. Yeah. But at the very end, because there ends up being like a Mexican standoff 3-way shootout between the police, the Christopher Walken's mafia guys that are after the money that Christian Slater stole from the pimp, or the coke that Christian Slater stole from the pimp, and the security guys of Saul Rubinek, who are just these absolute meatheads with submachine guns.
Yeah.
Absolute lugs. And it ends in this big fiery shootout, which is actually not fiery. It becomes like a snow-filled feather. There's a bunch of like pillows, and all of a sudden there's just feathers everywhere.
Yeah.
As all the furniture gets torn apart with gunfire, and then eventually somebody throws the suitcase full of coke and then shoots it, and then there's just coke flying everywhere too. Yeah. And it's just it's one of those touches. I think Tony Scott is a really good blockbuster filmmaker.
Oh, absolutely.
He's not showy in the way of a lot of our like modern. Like, he's not a Denis Villeneuve or someone. He's not showy in this particular, like, I have an eye for this certain thing. But he just knows, you know what? these shots at night are going to look glitzy as hell with all this neon everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, he does a lot with simpleness.
He understands the cool factor.
Or like when James Gandolfini's beating up Alabama, the hotel room is lined with mirrors, so they get a great shot of like Alabama against the wall, and we see James Gandolfini's face through all the mirrors on the wall.
Yeah.
Lots of small stuff. Is there any other scenes we need to get into, or
I think we can move on.
Actors to call out?
I think we hit basically everybody.
Let's go to It's an Art Bro, where we talk about the aspects of the filmmaking process, like sets, effects, lighting, and cinematography.
What's this?
It's an art project.
Okay, I like it. Picasso. Yeah, that way.
I just like that this movie looked like a movie.
They make them like movies now.
Yeah. It actually doesn't look too bad. It's still pretty. It still holds up.
Yeah,
pretty well.
It looks really nice. It just does things that movies don't do anymore. Like, they're like, hey, we're having a meeting between Saul Rubinick's assistant and Christian Slater to, hash out the details of our Coke deal. Yeah. Well, where should we have that? We could have it at a coffee shop. We could have it at a house. Fuck it. We're going to Six Flags. We're riding roller coasters. We're eating funnel cakes. Let's go.
Let's have a good time at this meeting. Come on.
Tony Scott was also the king of like these late 80s and 90s like excess where like the budgets balloon. Days of Thunder, which comes soon after this, is kind of the movie that killed the blockbuster.
Yeah.
It was a Tom Cruise NASCAR racing movie, and just the production got so out of hand with everything that it was one of the biggest tank jobs of the early 90s, and a lot of these budgets kind of got more reasonable with them after this, because things started to get out of control. And that's like those decisions that you can make only when you have a blank check where you're like, fuck it, we're going to Six Flags.
Right. We need to do something with this budget.
Where you're actually like renting out an amusement park for a week.
And I can appreciate that, because I'd take that over a small set. If we're using actual location, I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's a lost art. We try to avoid locations, or if we do have a location, it's often some hill somewhere.
Yeah,
it's not.
Well, everything is just private property, and it's like it's probably super hard to like book something now. But yeah, I love location shoots. That's why I like Big Lebowski so much.
Yeah, let's go to the bowling alley.
Yeah,
boys.
Seriously.
I do love the set dressing in a lot of the places, but Gary Oldman's house is a particularly great place because there's they make great use of a lamp. There's like this hanging lamp that's on a long chain, and it only hovers like 2 feet above the coffee table. So Gary Oldman keeps swinging it at Christian Slater while he's talking to him, and the lamp's just dangling back and forth, and they start like play fighting with it, and Christian Slater tries to hit him in the head with it at the end of the whole thing. And just everything involving the fit and idea of Gary Oldman's character, who I guess Tony Scott called him, and he was like, I haven't had a chance to read the script yet. And he's like, well, you play a white pimp who thinks he's black. And Gary Oldman was like, I'm in. Let's go.
Like he says for most films he's casting, I'm in. Fuck it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I just I really liked, it was very like the simplicity of everything is what I enjoyed. We talked about excess last time. Mm-hmm. And this film is like excess, but I think it's the right amount. It's never too much, and even when it is too much, it's still entertaining and coherent. So
I would like to shout out the fits. These 90s fits.
90s fits are crazy.
Christian Slater's signature look is these glasses and a short sleeve, like a tropical shirt,
and his hair,
and his spiky black hair.
Yeah.
And then Patricia Arquette is really just doing like a runway. She just is finding all kinds of new outfits.
Yeah, it's super colorful.
James Gandolfini stops when he meets her to compliment her on her outfit.
He's like, you are so cute.
So there's a lot of great 90s fits in here.
Christopher Walken dripped out.
Dude, he looks like death.
Yeah. Yeah, literally. Death incarnate.
And I think the soundtrack here, there's a main theme by Hans Zimmer, which we're a far away from Blomp land for this one.
He didn't find his true sound yet.
Is this just this sweet little ditty? And they abuse it. Like, they use it so much, and it's great. Like, they need to. It brings so much character to this movie.
It brings character to the film, but it also feels like it shouldn't be in this film.
No.
You know?
There are definitely parts that it feels at odds, but to me, it almost feels knowingly at odds. Like, it never fully twists the knife. Like, Natural Born Killers is, like, screaming at you, like, these are bad people.
Yeah.
You should not like our main characters. This movie just a couple times is like, maybe you should think twice about like what these characters are doing, and should we actually root for them? They definitely don't seem stable. Like, next day marriages is just not something stable people do.
I kind of see it like as like if we're getting into themes here, like a Paradise Lost kind of thing, where it's like this is the life that they want. You know, we want it to be whimsical, but it's like the dark, seedy undertones of everything else. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too hard about it, but
I'm trying to figure out Thelma and Louise. Is this before or after that? Because it's very Thelma and Louise.
This is after Thelma and Louise, right?
Yes, and that's a Ridley Scott movie. So it's kind of like Tony's Thelma and Louise.
Tony's just copying his brother.
But yeah, that song in particular, I'll try to put a clip in. Sometimes maybe Hans Zimmer will try to sue us into oblivion if I do that. But it's so joyful, and it's really, I think, what makes this movie feel so nice.
Yeah,
is kind of the key part of that, along with all the set dressing and design that is just pretty light and fun looking.
It's definitely like, this film is definitely one of those like 90s films that flew under the radar for me. This is my first time ever watching this. And it's like, I don't know, it just brings you back to a time where it's like these movies were made, you know? I don't know. It's
where real people with real talent made real movies.
Yes. Not saying, I don't want to be pretentious and say that that's not happening now, because we have tons of great filmmakers right now. But
at this scale,
the pulpiness. And this is something I'll get into next week as well when we review Desperado. But just I don't know, the lighthearted action that isn't terrible. I don't know how to explain it, because you get lighthearted action now, but then you get like Fall Guys or whatever, you know, or what is that? Free Guy?
The Fall Guy.
The Fall Guy.
Fall Guys is the Xbox game with the little, with the little Despicable Me looking guys.
But you know, I don't know. It's just of the time, and it's just a time period we'll never get back to. And I don't think can be replicated today. Maybe with movies like Bullet Train, stuff like that. But those are fairly rare now, I would say.
I think there's something just to be said about a movie with a budget that isn't full of computer effects.
Yeah.
Where like this movie would have been made with some computer effects somewhere. Like if it was made today.
Yeah.
There would have been some shortcuts taken, and because you couldn't take that shortcut, or it was like prohibitively expensive. Like, this is the early 90s. Some CG stuff exists, but it's not something you're planning to do in your movie. You know?
Yeah. And I have a feeling like the actors had a great time with this. You know?
Yeah.
Everybody seems like they're just having fun. Like Gary Oldman, you could probably say that about every film he's in.
No, but he's having fun.
But he's having a good time. He's hamming it up, and, you know, fuck it.
Yeah, the IMDb trivia said in some interview, he said this is one of his 2 favorite parts. I forget what the other one was, but yeah, I'm sure he really enjoyed it. A lot of actors, I'm sure, came in, got paid for a week. You know, went to LA, got paid for a week. And
for sure.
Also, just the setting of Detroit of the first half. It is kind of a movie of 2 halves, and they disappear at the midway point to kind of pursue their dream in LA. And the first half being in Detroit, you really do get the, like, it's gray.
Yeah.
It looks a little cold. Dennis Hopper lives in a in a trailer that's like 6 feet away from a train track. I'm not really sure what the zoning laws are in the state of Detroit, but
it's a huge industrial city, at least before when the car factories were a big thing. But yeah. Didn't Brad Pitt live next to a train track in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? He had a trailer too.
Maybe.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know. Those scenes looked pretty similar.
I know Tony Scott loves trains.
Hey, was this James Gandolfini's first film?
I don't know. I imagine he's had some work before this, just because they really do hand him like a shining role.
Yeah.
He gets a few moments to eat.
And then he's in another movie with Brad Pitt later on, Killing Them Softly.
Also features train tracks, I'm sure, at some point.
Yeah, that whole movie was great.
And if not, it definitely features track lines.
Yeah.
Track marks, I should say, on your arms, because we're doing heroin. Because it's a movie where...
That's fucked.
Where the guy that built the Death Star does heroin in a garage.
You know, that movie is pretty similar to this as well.
Shout out to Ben Mendelsohn.
But it's like the darker version, the really depressing version.
Okay,
of
this is the 90s like opulence version.
Yeah.
And, Killing Them Softly is the 2007 housing crisis version of this movie.
Where everybody's just sad.
Yeah. People are just killing each other over no money. Like,
literally.
Christian Slater is like, I'm getting $200,000 out of this in 90s cash. In Killing Them Softly, I swear they're like five.
It was like, it was pretty low, but it was like more so just the principle, the fact that you had the balls to do that shit, you know?
You can't be running games like that.
Nah.
Should we move on to, hey, what are you trying to say?
Take it away whenever you're ready.
All right, let me just get that last measurement on your
Thank you. You know, I need this for the wedding.
Okay, well,
I need it really quickly. Like
it could take about a week to do.
It could take a week?
Mm-hmm.
So, what are you trying to say? He's trying to say that I'm so big, my bum is so big, you need to order to various countries far away to get enough material to make a pair of pants so I can fit my incredibly obese buttocks into a pair of your specially made little suits.
No, I mean I'm the only one working here this week.
Oh, okay. Well, that would be great.
And I'm going to make a weird metaphor because I'm going to compare and contrast Natural Born Killers. Which this movie's more enjoyable, and I actually enjoyed it more. This is the second time I've watched it than I did the first time, because I think I knew the annoying parts, which I will get to in Let the Hate Flow Through You. So I was able to just enjoy the parts I enjoy. So Natural Born Killers, True Romance. Do you remember a couple years ago? I think I even talked about it a little bit on this pod. Me telling you about the show Kevin Can Fuck Himself.
Yeah.
So Kevin Can Fuck Himself is a show that's shot in like sitcom format for half of it. Whenever the father, there's no kids. Whenever the husband is on screen, it's shot like a 3-camera sitcom. And whenever he leaves, it's like a dark drama about how depressed the wife is about all his fuckery.
Yeah.
Natural Born Killers is Kevin Can Fuck Himself. It's like it's looking at these tropes and being like, what if this really was true?
Yeah.
How would we really feel about these individuals, these murderous people that are the center of both stories, these murderous couples? True Romance is just a straight sitcom. It's the version of it that's just like, yeah, they did some murdering, but you know what? Those were bad people anyways.
Yeah.
And, you know, like look at them. They're so nice, dude. They're so in love, and it's just kind of saying like it's not interrogating itself at all.
It was like kind of, it was lacking the social commentary aspect.
Yeah.
Or it wasn't so like in your face as Natural Born Killers was.
Although there is little details. Like even the cops are really racist. Just immediately are like, and it's a black cop and a white cop, and they're immediately both like, we hate him more now because we know he's Italian.
That's fucked.
We gotta shoot him even harder now.
It's just how cops think. The nihilism is lacking.
Yeah.
And that's another trope of Tarantino films in general. It's just like the nihilism. Like these characters are just like, I don't want to say soulless, but their outlook on the world is not whimsical as far as like these two characters are, and there's that hopefulness in them, kind of thing. So I find that kind of interesting.
And in how, and this probably is in the script, but just how we have this big shootout at the end, and then like everyone gets off pretty scot-free.
Yeah.
David Arquette has to, or not David Arquette, Christian Slater has to wear an eye patch now because he got shot in the eye.
Yeah.
But other than that, they have one big happy family and a baby named Elvis now. And it's just like, it's storybook.
Kind of reminded me of the it was a Nick Cage movie, Coen Brothers.
Nick Cage in Raising Arizona.
Yeah, kind of like the ending to that a little bit.
It's true. It does actually kind of feel like the ending of that. To me, it just feels a little less earned, and I don't know why.
Yeah. I
think I actually can get into why, and let the hate flow through you, if you're ready for that.
Yeah, let's move on.
Good. Use your aggressive feelings, boy. Let the hate flow through you.
And the reason why it feels less earned is because Christian Slater is actually a bad person. Yeah. Everything involved with this character, he's a bad guy, and it's just a power fantasy involving him. And like, even moments very near the end where he like holds the guy Elliot at gunpoint, the guy that's wearing a wire.
Mm-hmm.
But Christian Slater doesn't know that. But he just holds him at gunpoint and is like, something seems up. And everybody's like, no, don't do it. Why are you doing that? And his friends are all yelling at him. And then he just decides, okay, now I think I'm not suspicious of you anymore. And he puts his gun away.
Right.
And then everything's fine. Like, everybody just resets. I'm like, this guy is a live wire. He's a loose cannon. He goes in the bathroom and talks to his alter ego. Like, this should be coming off really dark.
That scene was like, I was like, okay, yeah, there's something off about this dude. And I thought it was going to go somewhere, with that a little bit more.
Like, this movie should read as him as a psychopath, but because it's the Tarantino insert character, he's, I guess, a great guy.
He's the guy you root for.
I guess.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's hollow, because like compared to Raising Arizona, like H.I. McDonough, he never does anything that really like crosses the line.
Yeah.
In his process, I suppose he does kidnap somebody's kid, but he does it to give it a loving home at his own house.
Yeah.
It's sick and twisted.
And I know I've brought this movie up a couple times already, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Brad Pitt's character is pretty similar too, where it's like, he's the guy you're supposed to root for, but he's also like a major asshole and just kind of crazy to begin with. Like, he has no problem beating the shit out of people and like all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I just found like similarities between these, like you're saying, these Tarantino insert characters. Yeah, it's just bizarre. He almost like reuses the same characters over
and
over.
Also the like, I may be the comic book store clerk, but deep down I'm actually a real badass that can do a lot of murdering.
Yeah.
And can handle myself in a combat situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where he just suddenly has all these skills for no reason because he is that guy, I guess.
Well, then you wouldn't have a movie.
Yeah, but there's ways to, Die Hard does that, but it doesn't do it because it explains.
He's a cop. I mean, he's a cop.
That he's a cop, and also he's constantly hurt and fucking up. Through the whole movie.
Yeah, he's vulnerable the entire film. That's why it works.
In this one, like nothing hardly ever goes wrong for him.
Yeah.
Also, what's wrong with his hearing? Where there's like a whole standoff and people are screaming at each other, and he's in the bathroom talking to his alter ego Elvis, and does not hear any of it. He walks out shocked.
Yeah, some of this film can. Well, let's move on to let the hate flow through.
We're already doing it.
Oh yeah, never mind. Well, it's like the pretentious shit comes through, and it always leaks through. Any kind of Tarantino script, anything. It's just like the pretentious stuff. Like, my guy is gonna be in the bathroom talking to himself.
Yeah,
just like, do you need that? You don't.
Especially if you're not going to do anything with it.
No.
It's just kind of an additional thing that happens.
But it adds nothing to his character. I mean, it could add something to his character, but it doesn't. So why even have it in there in the first place?
It seems like there should be. And I watched the director's cut, which I don't even know what it adds. It just was the only thing that was available to rent.
Yeah.
But you would think there's cut scenes of like where this is taking us on a darker path, Where when I go and speak to my id ego in the mirror, like that's usually something insane people do. It's like what like a Kubrick protagonist does as their mind is going, like as they're losing their minds.
Yeah.
It doesn't really track for me as a character we root for.
I have kind of a gripe. It's very minor, but like just some of the henchmen are just so goofy to me. They're just like your typical like Saturday morning cartoon henchmen. Like, hey boss, you're gonna be happy about this, like just kind of goofy shit. And from like a Tarantino script perspective, most of the time henchmen always have something to do, or they have more weight in their dialogue, or they have more character to them than just being the henchman. I don't know if that makes sense, or if you get what I'm saying.
I mean, there is a lot of guys that are just like, a boss, and then Christopher Walken goes like, look at his apartment and find me some evidence.
But then you think about, okay, Pulp Fiction. The two henchmen are Sam Jackson and John Travolta. You know what I mean? And they're great, and they have great dialogue and stuff like that. Obviously, like, those are key, important characters to that story. But it's like maybe instead of having all these different henchmen, you just have two guys, James Gandolfini and somebody else. You know what I mean? And that way they can kind of play off each other, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just don't like the hammy Saturday morning cartoon villain. Yeah. It's like, we got to get this guy. We're going to stop at nothing to get him.
Kind of on the same note, I think, is I find it really hammy at the end when the cops are like overhearing all this stuff and like applauding and being like, hey, I like this guy, this Christian Slater character, he's crazy just like me.
Yeah.
It was like just, and Tarantino's at his typewriter like patting himself on the back like through his hands. It's craziness.
It's like, and the cops like him too.
Yeah, the cops think he's really cool and badass too. This comic book store clerk that never shuts the fuck up about movies and music and comics.
So let's talk a little bit about Tarantino.
He's actually a smooth operator.
There are a lot of things about Tarantino that are red flags, whether it's his obsession with feet or his like toxic masculinity. It's bizarre, but I think he makes some great films from it, and just like his ability to make good characters has always been a thing. I just like, you can always tell when a movie is not directed by him though, just because the dialogue is not as like snappy, and it's very noticeable, especially like when you get movies that are like, this is obviously inspired by Tarantino or like written by him, different things like that. It's just missing that like, I don't know. It's missing that X factor that he has with most of his films. It's really hard to explain, but if you're privy to any of his work, like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's just like a magnetism to his dialogue that not many directors can pull off. And so, I don't know. Then it's like when I watch this, I think about what this could have been if he was directing this, I don't want to like blow him off too hard. You know what I mean? But you get what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
And like, that's my biggest problem with like Natural Born Killers. I was like, if Tarantino directed this would be so much better. Like, I don't know. He could find a way to make these characters work.
It would definitely be different. I don't know if it would be better. It would be more enjoyable.
Yeah. I don't know.
I find that to be a good but unenjoyable movie, and you do not.
I hated that movie. But I didn't hate this one.
Yeah, True Romance is fun.
It's a good movie. Let's move on to our final question.
Is this a perfect movie?
You lost a baby brother. Perfect in every way. I had a baby brother. I had a little baby brother. And he was perfect. Perfect in every way.
I was leaning more towards perfect movie by the end of the movie. I just think some of the red flags fly too hard for this movie for me to really want to put it on. The most racist scene in cinema history is in here.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of the best scene, but also...
It was just completely unnecessary.
Just so, like, disgustingly, like, why is it this?
Yeah.
Why is this scene this?
And
specifically?
it would be different if this was like an asshole character.
Yeah.
But this is the guy, like you were saying, you're supposed to root for in this scene.
For the first like 20 minutes he's in the movie, I'm like, this is the most reasonable person we've met this whole time. I like this guy.
And so, like, obviously, as a black guy watching this, like, I'm the audience.
Yeah.
And so I immediately disconnect from this film when I see that scene.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be one of those guys who is like, oh, man, you know, I'm so offended by everything kind of thing. Like, I get why there are certain things like that in different films when it serves a purpose, though.
Yeah.
You know, like in Hateful Eight, everybody's saying the N-word. But I get because it's a time period where that shit happened, and these are racist fucking characters. I get it. So I'm not mad about it. This was just like, why the fuck?
Yeah, this is just a one-off. This is a real, like, reveal about Dennis Hopper's buried beliefs, apparently. You know?
Yeah.
I have this whole spiel on his hip, ready to go.
Yeah.
This very, very racist tirade. And it is used to trigger the bad guy, I guess. But it seems unnecessary. It seems you're the writer, Quentin Tarantino. Use your imagination to write literally anything that could trigger this fictional mob boss. The world is your oyster.
Yeah.
Why did it become this?
I just don't know why you pull black people out of nowhere. Like, why are you bringing us into this? Like, what the fuck?
Especially in a movie where, like, black people aren't really represented hardly at all.
They're in
like,
the first 5 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
You know, and then they get their heads blown off. So
there's not really any black characters at all that have any screen time.
No. It's just bizarre, man. I don't get it. But
this is why people like Spike Lee and people like Cat Williams.
Yeah.
Are like side-eyeing Quentin Tarantino.
You're like, what the fuck is that?
What are you doing? What are you doing? Somebody should have checked you on this a long time ago.
Yeah, for sure.
The bill is due.
Also, just like, like you were saying about Christian Slater's character, he's just, I don't know. He's not as bad as Woody Harrelson as far as like the character, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. I just get so tired of like these incel, like Revenge of the Nerd characters, you know?
Yeah, and everything he does when he deals with the pimp is like, how did you think that was going to end? It's like he walked in there to incite violence, kind of.
Right.
Because he walked in there, he's like, this is the money that I will pay you for my peace of mind. And that's how much it's worth. And then he hands him an empty envelope.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't, you're walking in expecting violence. It's like he's, watched too many kung fu movies and he's just here to, start his duel.
Right, for sure.
It's silly. So I wouldn't put it on the perfect movie list. Although I'd say it's a fun movie. It's good.
Yeah, and I, like you were saying, I was more inclined to like consider this to be on the list like earlier on because I had a good time. And again, I think it's just one of those, we kind of have like a subsection where we say like you either had to be there, or it was like it was of the time kind of thing. Just films like these that are rarely made now. And yeah.
Underseen 90s gem, I think. Not as high on the totem pole as a lot of stuff, but I'd recommend, despite some of the red flags. It's a good watch, but not on the perfect movie list.
No.
So next week we will be finishing up February. We haven't discussed our March plans. Who knows what we'll do in March?
Who knows? No.
But next week we are going to cover Desperado, another film
about immigrants.
Involves Quentin Tarantino. It's a Mexican film. Directed by Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah.
It's the second film in the El Mariachi trilogy, starring Antonio Banderas.
And Danny Trejo.
And Selma Hayek.
Yeah,
so
should
next
be a fun
week,
time.
We'll continue our Toxic Love February. See you then.
I have one of those Chesterfields now.
It's either called the Dennis Hopper, Christopher Walken scene, or it's called the Sicilian scene.
Sicilians were spawned by niggas.
The Sicilian speech came about in real life through two friends. One was a kind of badass older black guy there's my mom, and then her best friend was a woman named Jackie. She had a brother, Big D, the most commonly used nickname. And he used to tell me about history and stuff. And he told me way back when about how the Moors conquered Sicily and how the Moors were black and they started fucking the Sicilian women, and that's why Sicilians look the way they do today.
Black hair and dark skin.
I always thought it was kind of interesting. Cut to years later, I'm like 23, 24, and my roommate, still a friend of mine to this day, and he was Sicilian, and I'm like fucking with him and teasing him, right? And I do the Sicilian speech in this movie for the first time. And when I finished it, I was like, hey, that's a good scene. Note to myself, remember that.
I gotta ask you, this is something that I just thought about right now. Yeah. Now, one of the problems that people are saying is that he made a movie about slavery, right? And a lot of people were upset about that. Now, Steven Spielberg made a movie about slavery with Amistad.
Quentin Tarantino is no Steven Spielberg.
Mm-hmm.
Steven Spielberg doesn't want to be black. Quentin Tarantino thinks he is.
Okay.
So when he meets a real, we'll see if he is or not.
So if you see him out at an event, what are you gonna
busting his ass?
Busting his
on
ass.
Site.